Stanford D School, the design school at Stanford, came up with this notion of design thinking. So he coined the term design thinking, and he has an excellent TED Talk where he talks about this concept of creative confidence. Did you see that thing? David Cameron? A few people, yeah. But about this important message that the school system today, in most places, break down our creative confidence. Right? So over the years, we are told that no, you're not very good at drawing, or you're not very good at playing music. So all of a sudden, we start not perceiving ourselves as creative human beings. I'm happy to see here that when I ask the questions, are you creative? You say, yes! Yes! Right? So we have some of that creative confidence. And creativity in this context is defined as your ability to solve problems, right? Not your ability as an artist or as a musician, but being able to connect the dots and come up with new ideas. So design thinking is familiar to most of you. The first step is have extreme amounts of empathy and really get into the mindset of your user, of your target audience, right? We need to understand the problem and we need to define it, right? To narrow the scope, and I know some of you are still in that process and it's perfectly fine and we'll help you out, but narrow it down so it's like a single problem that you want to solve. We need constraints in order to be effective when we start ideating. The human brain works better in a somewhat constrained environment. You can come up with a lot more ideas if we put up constraints compared to saying just like, come up with an amazing idea to save the planet. It's like, oh, you know, it's just too broad. So that's why we put these constraints on, because then when we dive into the green zone, which we are about to dive into now, we unleash all these creative ideas and we go wild and crazy, and it's about quantity over quality. And I know this is very hard for all the, where are all my engineers in the room? Right? Yeah. We are very good at killing ideas, right?
Thank you.
We love killing ideas and shooting them down and finding all the million reasons why this is not going to work. But I'm going to challenge you to, in the green zone here, at least for the first hour, hour and a half, we're just generating more ideas. You're not allowed to say, no, but this is going to be too expensive, or no, but these materials are never going to be able to work for this context. You are forced to say, yes, yes, and we can also do this and that, right? So you build on each other's crazy, stupid, bad ideas, and just generate more ideas. And the reason why we do that is because the bad idea can work as a catalyst for the brilliant idea. It's 100% unpredictable what is going to happen over the next 3.5 hours. But hopefully you and your team will get into this magical flow state where everyone is just coming up with ideas and you're building on each other's ideas, and you end up with concepts that you never thought would be possible to come up with. And you wouldn't be able to come up with those by yourself, but because some people are inspired by an element of this crazy idea that you allowed yourself to say, you start coming up with ideas that could actually work. So even elements of a really bad idea can inspire somebody else to come up with something brilliant, if that makes sense. So don't hold back. We want to hear all those crazy, stupid ideas. And don't worry, engineers. Later on, you will be able to apply some more logical, rational thinking to eliminate some of these terrible ideas. And we'll do that. We'll eliminate some of the worst ideas, and we'll start prototyping and selecting and testing and all that good stuff. So, are there any bad ideas?
No.
There are probably lots of bad ideas, right? But they can all work as a catalyst to the brilliant idea. And if you look throughout the history of innovation and entrepreneurship and startups and even science, this is not working. There we go. The sweet spot is often right there in between of what seems to be a really terrible idea, but what is actually a good idea. So if we're trying to come up with breakthrough innovations, they actually have to seem bad to most people when you're telling them about it. Like if every time you talk to a new person, they're like, oh yeah, we should totally do that, then it's probably too obvious. It's probably not that cutting edge. Right? The cutting edge ideas are those that seem bad to a lot of people until they really get it. Those could be the best ideas. Right? If you look at something, for example, like an Airbnb, right? Was that a good idea to begin with? Like, what happened when those guys, they pitched some of the, like 40 of the top VCs in Silicon Valley with Airbnb, and they got 40 no's. Right? Because every time there's like, oh yeah, and then when you go on vacation, you should have some strangers come stay in your bedroom, in your sheets, right? That seems like a really terrible idea. And when you're on vacation with your family, you can stay in somebody else's dirty house. Like, it just seems like a terrible idea, but it works, right? And today, what is the valuation of Airbnb, you think? few billion? Yeah. 300 million? Right? Try 60 billion. Right? So largest real estate, or like the largest hotel or accommodation provider in the world, but they don't own any real estate. But they've managed to create a platform where it's infinitely easier and infinitely more scalable. We'll talk about business models later today. To add an extra room, right? What does Hilton have to do if they want to add an extra room? Build another building, right? Or at least add on to the existing buildings. But what does Airbnb do? They spent $10 on advertisement for homeowners in Chicago, and all of a sudden, boom, they have new listings, right? So it's infinitely more scalable. That's what can create a lot of value. There we go. Good. So don't be discouraged if people don't get your idea right away. It might be because you're on the path to something brilliant, or it might be a really bad idea. But the point is, we need a lot of ideas to eventually have a good idea. So come up with a lot of good ideas first. So some people tend to criticize brainstorming, right? Who here like brainstorming? Or some people really hate brainstorming? Some people really hate brainstorming, yeah. And one of the reasons is that this oftentimes tends to happen. Right? That you sit down in a group, and then 99% of the ideas is from one really loud, super annoying A-type person, right? Who thinks he or she is so brilliant, and everyone should just come aboard and listen to my ideas, because I am a genius. And the problem with this, apart from it being very frustrating, is that everyone get into what we call group thinking. Right? You get very easy when somebody else is talking, your mind can't just shut that out. You start thinking along the same patterns. And then we actually have ideas that are very similar and very narrow. So to prevent this from happening, we will start with what's called a silent brainstorm. So as you go down into the mission arenas here in a minute, and you're welcome already now, right? Some of you have your notepads out, if you have sticky notes and a pen, to just write down, empty your own head with ideas before you start getting distracted by other people's ideas. So this is very important. So the first step you do when you come back to your mission arenas, take 5 or 10 minutes, just silent brainstorming. Don't speak to your co-founders at all. First you need to make sure that you've nailed your problem statement and everyone's working on the same problem. Once you've gotten that and you're ready to start ideating, start with a silent brainstorm. And in 5 minutes, I've seen people come up, just individuals come up with over 30 ideas. Right? So each of you should come up with at least 15, 20 ideas before you start sharing. And then you take your best 10 ideas, and then we can start doing a group brainstorm. Ideally up on a window, like standing up, sharing these ideas one by one, and you're still building more. So as you're listening to other people's ideas, you have your block of sticky notes, and you can add to that. And then you just start creating this like massive mind map of ideas. Don't worry about sorting and selecting to begin with. The first hour is all about generating. We just want more and more ideas. So don't fall in love with one idea or get spiral down on just one concept. Force yourself to move on. Once one idea is described, you force yourself to move on. Let's explore other ideas. So we start having a whole landscape of different ideas. And as you're thinking about ideas, and you're welcome to have a block of stickies right now, because I'm going to go over a couple of different tech trends. And I would like you to consider, and these are not all equally applicable to all the different mission arenas, but just start thinking about, as we're now trying to generate solutions, what are some of the new exponential tech trends that might allow us to solve this type of problem in a way that was never possible before? Right? So a friend of mine, Jeff Hoffman, who's one of the founders of Priceline.com, he has this technique he calls info sponging. So every morning before he opens up his email, before he reads the newspaper or anything like that, he will just like start writing down like random ideas, and as he starts reading the news or diving into different research articles and things like that, he will just like try to figure out what are different trends that are happening right now in society, in terms of regulatory policy, in terms of problems around the world, but also in terms of technological advancements. What can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? Right? And there's a lot of these, as we talked about, a lot of exponential tech trends now that would enable us to come up with scalable solutions to some of the problems you're working on in ways where it wasn't possible 2 years or 5 years ago. And that's why bright young minds, future entrepreneurs can come up with these disruptive solutions, and that would be better than what existing multi-billion-dollar companies are doing today. So think about social, location, and mobile, right? Some of these overarching trends. We have social networks that are empowered by mobile phones and location-based technologies. We know where everyone is at all times. Something like the sharing economy, right? Instead of you having to own your own device or own your own assets at home, many of those can be shared. Just like an Airbnb, but also why are we not sharing a lawnmower? We use it once a week. Why do we all need to have power tools at home? Like simple things like that. But it's just this overconsumption. If we had more of a sharing mentality, that could really have a massive impact. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, how can that be applied to understand data and to aggregate things in your specific mission arena? Advanced robotics have become a lot more intuitive and exponentially more affordable, right? It used to cost $500,000 for this type of Baxter robot, but now it's down to like 20K, right? Or probably even less today, right? So it's 23 times cheaper in just 5 years. So if we look at drone technology for observation in waters, or over lunch here we're talking about these illegal dump sites for garbage. Maybe we can have drones or satellite imagery that we can recognize and we can scan things, and they just cost a fraction of what it used to cost for these types of technologies. 3D printing, we can print in all different types of materials. A friend of mine had his first part printed on the space station, right? It makes a lot of sense to print spare parts on the space station instead of sending them up. So today it's also a lot more affordable, a lot more effective than other types of manufacturing, at least in the beginning. Internet of Things, all our different devices are getting connected. We have added sensors. We can utilize that data in all kinds of intelligent ways. For example, with thermostats, obviously, that you're probably all familiar with at this point, with Nest thermostats. But in many other ways in our lives, right? These smart meters, smart grid, safety, security, connected home, building automation. There's so many ways of utilizing sensor technology compared to IoT devices, certainly in terms of health and well-being. Quantified self is a big movement around these effective sensors for our bodies. Think about augmented reality and virtual reality. Augmented reality, where you just have your own mobile device and you can add an extra layer to what you're seeing, could be used to create a game where people understand the impact of trash in nature, or getting people motivated to actually do things like that. Virtual reality offers a bunch of different interesting opportunities, and we're just starting to see the very beginning of this, right? These technologies are definitely evolving at an exponential rate, and we're going to see so many more applications. Could very well be a technology that you can apply somehow. Yeah, we see Pokemon Go was one of the first really successful. Any Pokemon Go fans? Nobody wants to admit it. A few people. Good. Awesome. 5 Pokemon Go players. Yeah, I saw some great ones right around the corner down here. Okay, so gamification. Are we familiar with that concept? How many gamers do we have in the room? Fair amount of gamers. What is it that makes games fun to play?
Competition.
Competition. What else?
Rewards.
Rewards. Yeah, what else? Challenges.
Cooperation.
Cooperation. Collaboration. Yeah. Storytelling. And a fantasy. And a sense of progression too, right? If you are trying to recover from a disease, and you're like today, or for example, a military veteran who lost his legs and now have to learn how to walk with a new prosthetic device, can seem pretty hopeless, right? If you're starting from scratch and today you can't walk, and 2 years from now you can walk. But if you break down that process into a number of missions or a number of steps, and you get to see that sense of progression, you get rewards along the way, it can be a lot more motivating. So gamification is now, of course, used in the game world, but it also works in the real world. So if you want to motivate change and incentivize people to change their behavior somehow, it'd be very, very powerful to add an element of gamification into whatever solution you're creating. Okay, so lots of different options for using new technology, and you are welcome to come up with your own. Right? So maybe at some point you say, okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and we all in our team just each of us find 5 different interesting trends that we'll bring back to the table. And then we go over those and we see if these tech trends could inspire us to come up with a new idea. So you're welcome to invent your own brainstorming techniques as well. So after the silent brainstorming, we dive into group brainstorming. And when we're brainstorming as a team, there are a couple of different rules that you will benefit from following. And they're listed over here. They're from this company, IDEO. The first one is don't judge. We talked about this, right? Like no idea is a bad idea. So don't shoot down each other's ideas. Force yourself to say yes and we can also do this and that, right? We want to build more ideas. So encourage wild ideas, build on each other's ideas. Try to listen to one person at a time, and then you can add to that. You can write additional ideas and just find a place on the wall and create a huge map of ideas. Be visual. So not just about writing it out in text. It will give you a lot more perspective if you try to create a model. If you need cardboard or any other sort of prototyping materials, let us know. And we'll try to grab some from the makerspace downstairs, and then go for quantity. Yeah, it's actually a fun challenge for you to sketch out the idea and try to create a little story around how is this problem experiencing people, like how do people experience this problem today, and how could we solve it? But then instead of just writing down the idea, force yourself to sketch it out. Do we have any good artists in the room? Do we have any people who are really bad at drawing? Right, exactly. So that's how I felt a while back, but then I really started practicing, and I got incredibly good at sketching. This is one of my latest creations, and I'm proud of this one. So you see, anyone can learn to be a master artist here. Yeah, so, okay, so what will happen eventually, initially you can come up with all kinds of ideas, right? And you write them down and you have lots of ideas. Many of these ideas are going to be great, however, the first ideas that come to mind are the most obvious ideas, right? The ideas that all the other people around the world have also thought about. So you're gonna, at some point, you're going to start having a dip, and you're going to start struggling. It's like, oh, I cannot come up with any more good ideas. Are you going to give up? No, you will keep squeezing some of that creative juice out of your brains, right? So you can either just keep what you're doing and say, great, well, let's take another 20 minutes and come up with another 20 ideas. Just force yourself to keep going. Or you can apply a different type of brainstorming techniques. But the fact is that many of the best ideas actually come after the dip. So if you power through that low energy phase, go for a walk and then you come back to it, you will, I promise you, you will come up with more good ideas after that. So how can we do that? Well, you can use different types of brainstorming techniques. One of my personal favorites is one called reverse brainstorming. And the steps involved in reverse brainstorming are as follows. You look at your original problem statement, and then you flip it. So say like, our problem statement is how can we prevent bullying in high schools here in the Netherlands? Okay? So that's our original problem statement. Now, we do the opposite. It's like, how can we increase the amount of evil bullying in high schools in the Netherlands? And then we try to come up with ideas for this new problem. So how would you do that? How would you increase it? What's that?
Reward the bully.
It was very fast. But yes, reward them, right? We want to gamify this so that at the end of each week, the teacher is pulling up the bully who made the most kids cry every week, and they get an award, right? Yeah, exactly. What else can we do?
Gamify bullying.
Gamify bullying, yes?
Automate bullying.
Automate bullying, yeah. Good. And give them weapons and have a training academy. Yeah, exactly. So you come up with all these bad ideas, you keep them in a separate pile. Okay, this one you don't want to do silent, you want to do it brainstorming out loud. So as soon as you have an idea, you share it with your team so they can laugh at it and come up with even worse ideas. You write them down, so you have a pile of bad ideas. And then after 5 minutes, you switch and then you say, now we're going to go through all these bad ideas and we're going to try to see if we can flip them into a good idea that we haven't thought about before. Okay? So choose somebody in the team who's like the creative facilitator for this process, who will manage time and just like try to run some of these sessions with you. But it turns out this is really fun, and it actually will prompt good ideas that you didn't think about before. So there's a number of these brainstorming techniques, and if you need more input, I'm happy to come around and I can run some more of these with you. But the creative process, we scope the problem, then we ideate, we generate tons of ideas, and not until the earliest, I would say, 2:30, 2:45, you can start switching into sorting and selecting. So at least a solid hour of just generating ideas. More and more ideas, or we can also say 3 o'clock. And then after that time, you can switch on your mindset and say, okay, now we have 200 ideas up on the board. Let's try to cluster them into different overall topics. Let's try to see if there are some common topics. Maybe we can merge some of these ideas. Don't just merge every idea into one. It's not going to work, right? Remember, less is more. You are a scrappy little team. You can only do one thing really well for one group of customers. So less is more. But some of them might be able to merge or combine or in other ways, like figure it out. So you get an overview of all the ideas. And then ultimately, you need to pick one core concept that will turn into a brilliant new venture or science concept or collaboration or whatever it might be. Just to clarify, I know I talk a lot about startups and entrepreneurship, but of course the outcome here at the TalentOn does not have to be in the form of a new startup venture. It can be take many different shapes and forms. So as long as it's impacting the greater mission that you are addressing, it's totally fine. It can take many different shapes and forms. Okay, so yeah, so here you can sort, select into different topics. There is another template for this you can use if you want. You can add different axes as well, but one of them that's important is value, right? And who defines value? The customer or the user that you have in mind, right? So from a user's perspective, how valuable would this solution be for that person? Would it dramatically impact their lives in a positive way, or would it be like, meh, sort of nice to have? And then level of uniqueness, right? This is one of the axes that the judges are going to look at. Like, does this stand out compared to existing concepts? So then you have these different quadrants, and you can use that just to map it out. It doesn't have to be the idea that's the most valuable and most unique, but you probably don't want to be over here with low value and low uniqueness. Okay, so the overall steps, and this is the last slide. Step number 1, revisit the problem statement. Make sure that everyone is aligned around that problem statement. How can we help X specific users solve X specific problem? Try to get it approved by your mission manager before moving on, ideally. Then you start with a silent brainstorming. Give yourselves 5 or 10 minutes. And then you can do group brainstorming, where each person brings his or her good ideas up, and you just plaster a wall, and each person you take turns explaining all the ideas that you have, and while the other people think about that and add new ideas to it. Reverse brainstorming is fun to try, and then you sort and select the best ideas. You can do rapid research, as I mentioned before. Maybe let's take 10 minutes and each of us find relevant trends or relevant historical data or whatever other companies doing similar things. Also, when you've selected the top ideas, or the top one idea you want to work on, do some research and figure out, does this already exist? Right? And if it already exists, don't be discouraged. There are a lot of competitors, there are a lot of companies doing other things to try to mitigate these challenges out there. If there is a competitor, it means that there's a market, and there are other people doing it in some way or form. You just need to out-innovate what they're doing. Right? So we don't want to be doing the same. One of the criteria is that it has to stand out from existing solutions, but it's not necessarily a bad sign if somebody else is doing something similar. It means that they're able to do it, so there's a need, and there's a market that's already proven. And then you select your best idea and you start conceptualizing that. And once you get to this point, if you get to that point faster than what we've estimated before 5 o'clock, you let us know and we can start working on business models. But otherwise, just take your time going through the steps. Really important, spend a lot of time just generating ideas before we get into sorting and selecting. All right, my friends, that's what I have for you now. Any questions? Yes?
And we
How
are
can we come up
back
with an idea that
just
was
after
never
lunch.
seen
I hope you
before,
all had a
and
nice
also
lunch and are now ready to get back into things. And so am I. I'm here with 2 more interviewees, and we're going to start off with Johannes. Johannes, thank you for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me.
And so you are working on the mission of climate neutral and smart cities. Is correct?
Yes.
Yes, great. And could you please tell us a little bit more about you?
So I'm a PhD in applied physics. I'm looking into materials at the moment that they can change their volume when you apply potential.
Okay, great. And so then what made you choose this mission area then when you were applying?
And so I'm in the smart cities path. So the thing is that climate change is like very important for everyone, but the biggest leverage you will have in the cities, because that's where most of the people live, where you have most of the consumption of materials, of energy and all of this. So if you want to change something, it makes sense to change it there, I would say.
Yes, yeah, and maybe would you then, do you think it's important to include the local communities in this as well when you're working with smart cities?
The people that live in the area, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work if people feel kind of left behind.
Exactly, I agree completely. And also then, so you said you have a PhD in applied physics. So how are you kind of bringing your knowledge to your group, and how is the group dynamics?
To my surprise, we ended up most likely with material science thing. Even though everyone else was a bit, also me in the beginning, we were very excited about plant-based solutions, but now we ended up somewhere completely different.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite fun.
Yeah.
And it was a big surprise.
Yeah, nice. And how have you enjoyed your first day as well? First 1.5 days now, I suppose.
It's very nice to think a bit outside of this academic bubble things. And that's also why I signed up, that to have this different mindset, and also to have the interface between the society and the policy and the companies with the academia, which is where I usually only spend my time, right?
Yeah, okay, so it's nice to explore other areas a little bit.
Yeah.
Great, well, that's all my questions for you. Thank you so much for taking a bit of time out of the busy schedule to come and talk to me. And good luck with the rest of the day.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And next, I would like to welcome Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me as well. So you are working actually on the adaptation to climate change mission.
Yeah.
Great. And first, before we go into this, can you give me a little bit about your background?
Okay. For me, I started my studies in plant science.
Okay.
And so for my PhD, I'm a third-year PhD in Exeter University at the moment. So I'm switched to environmental geoscience. And so I'm combining my knowledge from plant science and the oceans in approaching problems related to the mission.
Yeah, and why did you make that change?
I decided to switch because of the skill opportunities there, as well as the climate-related solutions that I think that the data that we generate, the potential it has, and the effect, especially within what I work on, generates data useful in the IPCC reports and all of those things. So it feels exciting to be part of the big picture.
Yeah, exactly. And big changes that are happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, really cool.
Exactly.
And why then did you decide also to do the TalentOn?
Well, for me, I found it as an opportunity to serve. I see the EU TalentOn as an opportunity to serve communities around Europe, across the globe, to serve in a way that we are coming together to solve a solution that nobody can ignore. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, you are feeling it. So it feels exciting to try to dig in to find something to at least advance humanity and all that.
Yeah, and also how is it to work with people from different areas?
It's been pretty interesting. Like for me, I have an environmental geoscience background. I have a physicist, civil engineer, and someone from a finance background.
Yes.
So,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really diverse,
and
so the kind of questions we ask to probe the kind of questions we ask to probe or validate an idea is different. And so you say something, but the next question from the other person makes you be like, okay, I didn't think about this. So this is it's not somewhere you should go to, right? With the idea. So it feels good to like work within a team and see how everybody adjusts to themselves and get out of their idea, their head to.
Really, I've really noticed actually how it seems like a little bit, there's been a shift of kind of thought process today than yesterday, because I feel like everybody's a bit more settled, but a lot busier as well,
I
in a way. Like it's
the agile methodology we are adopting, the agile kind of approach, it's interesting such that I took a walk just away from my team for like 20, 30 minutes to make a call based on what we are working on. Before I got back, we are somewhere else.
Oh yeah, so it's go, 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 go.
Yeah, it's like go. We see roadblock. Okay, no, we need to move this way.
Yeah,
so
wow.
it's happening so fast.
Wow, yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's all my questions. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. I love hearing about how people are experiencing the EU TalentOn, and it's great to hear that.
And it's great being in Leiden, by the way.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, we're very happy to have you guys here. So
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everything. Yeah, cool.
Hey, so we'll take a bit of a small break before our next few interviews. Stay tuned.
There you see the red line. And if you basically first have the patients, they are treated and the tumor comes back, and then you give them A-glucosidase, you get the purple line. So in other words, there is I would say urgent need to make this drug. So how do you do that? Well, this is the drug. But there is no patent position because the drug has been already. Yeah? On the other hand, you can also argue, well, there's no risk because we know it works. So I've been talking to, you see them here, and these are the responses, and some of them are very interesting, like the clinicians, because they say, well, no, this is good for the patient. They say, okay, make it fancy. We can make a paper out. But you see, there are people that say, well, there's no risk, basically meaning, how can I get most of my profit out of it? And no patent is another point. I have argued, well, a patent of course protects you, but on the other hand, can also make it very cheap, and then no one's going to make it. So do this kind of stuff. Well, this sums up my feelings. So the question is how to get such a drug. And so I've been talking to many people and usually didn't work, but at one point I talked to Lotje Zuur, who will become professor here in Leiden in a couple of months. And she told her husband, Erik Grimmelhuis, to help. And Erik found a lady who lived in the forest in Finland, who used to have a company at the Swedish making these particular drugs, but that company went bankrupt. But she still had the two strains, you can see them here, as from the soil, that you need to make these compounds. That compounds, these those were brought to Turku, and there they were put in these fermenters to basically show, yes, we can make the drugs from this stuff. Well, then you have to make it on the GMP condition. It's a complicated thing, so we sent it to India. And the way it's being made is in fermenters of this type. And these fermenters so this is the only thing. If you go too far below, they just won't go down there. So they have fermenters 20 meters high to make drugs. And many of the drugs that you use, well, I don't know how many drugs you use, but that you may use, are made in fermenters of this type. Yeah. Then you may ask, well, how the hell do we get our drugs out of such a fermenter? Well, but it's an interesting point. The point is that it was already shown in publications that A-glucosidase is excellent for blood tumors, but not for solid tumors. And the majority of the tumors that we have are solid tumors. And then I always wanted to know why is that, until we did what's called the PK/PD studies, pharmaceutical language. The PD is nothing else than biodistribution. So if you inject it, there is a drug over it. And it turns out that dimethyldoxal is basically behaving like doxaluxin itself. So in other words, if doxal works, then you can be pretty sure that dimethyldoxal is also good in the same. And A-glucosin is more stable in the circulation of blood. Excellent for blood tumors, but not for solid tumors. So that basically means that if you would like to treat both of them, you basically, if you want to have a drug that can be broadly used, then you basically have to make both of them. So I got an award, and I asked, so I hired a postdoc in Turku, and they work on these bacterial strains, to basically start modifying it, so bring into the streptomyces strain, like this guy, the enzymes to put two of its methods. So we did, and we always sometimes we saw it. And it turned out, and we finally thought about it really, so we took the chemically made stuff. But actually we have also made quite good antibiotic. So in other words, the bacteria starts making it and then kills itself. So that's usually not a very productive scheme. So that is not the way to make it. And what we spent about a year to basically find the synthesis route to basically go from this guy to that. And that is what you need to do if you want to make a kilogram. So in the lab you make 20 milligrams or something like that. That is considerably different from a kilogram. You know, if you calculate back from the lab condition to the kilogram condition with everything, you need a water pool or something filled with compound, with a solution to basically do it. Now that is not what you want to do. So the whole thing is then to bring it back to a small volume. But if you then have an experimental step where you get heat formation, then the whole thing explodes. So it's also very complicated. So you have to find the chemistry route on how to do it, and well, it's good to talk about it. It took us a year. And yeah, what to do next? So here you can see how we did it. So this is overclave, this is Dennis. And this is Jos, who is from a company who also helped us with basically saying, well, this is what you should do, this is what you should not do. Well, there you have it. Then you have to talk to a company who can make it in the Netherlands. It is forbidden to make large amounts of this compound. There's no company in the Netherlands that has the permits to work with these kind of compounds. So I found a company in northern Italy, Olon. This is one of the people from Olon, to basically find out, well, can we translate what we have done in the lab to Italy? And the answer is yes, and they are currently working on what's called the test batch, which precedes the clinical batch to basically bring this compound together. And then you have to talk about how to further develop it, and then so very easy for something as simple as going from bench to bedside. You have a team of 20, 30, 40 people that are all doing their small steps in order to do this. But we are busy with it. So the eclorubicin. So how much does this cost? Just to give you an idea. So as you know, drug development is usually to be calculated as being something that costs €1 billion, or 2 or 3. This is how we do it. And it's not $1 billion, but it's still multiple millions. So if you go to eclorubicin, it's about €1 million to make it. And then you have to check it. But to check it is about 200,000 euros. Just for the pharmacy. And they do also the and then they do a cross-clinical study. If you go to the synthesis route, you can basically see it like that. So what it basically means, that if you do this under academic conditions, you can make drugs under €10 million. Okay, where are we? This drug, the yellow one, the eclorubicin.
And we are back with some more interviews. I have a fun-filled, packed lineup. I've got 4 people with me today, or right now. So we're going to get started. We're going to start with Marie. Hi, Marie.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So you're in the mission area of cancer, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So before we talk a little about the EU TalentOn, I'd just like to know a bit about you. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Mary. I'm 27. I'm half French, half Czech. I'm currently, well, I have a mathematics background where I studied math. And I enjoyed applying my mathematics skills, statistics skills, in 2 medical applications, 2 medical issues. So yeah, this is how I specialized into medical applications during my PhD, and now I'm a postdoc in genetic epidemiology in Paris.
Brilliant. And can you talk me through a bit of the process of applying for and coming to the EU TalentOn?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's been quite a story. In fact, I was looking for my next adventure, my next postdoc. So I was scrolling through the Euraccess portal, and I've seen this little ad for the EU TalentOn. So I clicked on it because I'm really curious. And yeah, I saw this amazing EU initiative. And as I'm pretty an involved EU citizen, I was really happy to take part in it. So yeah, I had a look on the 5 EU missions, and I saw the cancer mission, and it really made sense to my background and to my interests. So yeah, I applied and here I am.
Great. And how are you enjoying it so far?
I am. It's really an amazing, intense adventure.
Yeah.
A really amazing, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah.
And finally, just a bit more about yourself. I know that you're a bit of a sports lover. Can you go into a bit of detail of the kind of sports you like to do?
Yeah, so like currently I'm pretty much enjoying hiking and walking, a bit of running. I also started gymnastics 3 years ago, which was quite a challenge as a young adult to start gymnastics. But yeah, it was, I really enjoy it. It's really fun. So yeah, and I'm also a former skier, alpine skiing. So
very cool. Wow.
Yeah. So
lots of you've tried lots of different things.
Yeah, I really like that, meeting new people. And you know, we were talking, I think yesterday during the talk about the flow state that allows you to be creative. Yeah. And I really found out through sports. So this is my way to find new ideas or solving problems.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's great to do things sometimes outside of science and maybe your comfort zone as well, to find new ways of exploring different aspects of your creativeness and things like this.
Yes, it's all about being ambitious and challenge yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. That's all the questions I have for
thank you very much.
Thanks, and best of luck with the rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And next we will have Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me today. So you're working on the adaptation to climate change.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. And can you give me a little bit of background about you, who you are, what you do?
Yes, so I'm Liz. I'm doing my PhD here at Leiden. I'm a linguist, so I've been studying linguistics most of my academic career. But I've also been doing a bit of work on policy and university council, for example. So thinking a bit about academics getting more involved in policy and representation as well.
Great. And why do you think it's important for academics to get into policy, to do these things, similar to what we're doing here at the EU TalentOn?
Well, I think especially in the context of climate change, there are such big problems that you need to have some real-world impact as well. We also have a lot of knowledge already in academia. For example, in our project, we're looking at agriculture. There's so much science that can be used to improve agricultural practice. And it's then therefore very important when you have such a big crisis, like the climate crisis, that we can actually make sure that it actually gets addressed.
Yeah, definitely. And then focusing then on your background in linguistics. Of course, we have many different disciplines here, but linguistics is, I haven't met anyone yet.
I would be curious if there is another linguist.
So I'd really like to know how you're bringing your knowledge of that and the humanities into your group and how you're working together.
Well, what I really like about our group and the way the scheme is structured is you have a mix of disciplines. So I'm working with a biologist, I'm working with people with social sciences background and also a business background. What I think is valuable from the kind of humanities social sciences thing is the idea of the cultural context in which you implement something. Also things like we talk a lot about ethics, for example, about whether a particular intervention is ethical, whether it will have knock-on impacts. And for example, with climate change, there is a big issue of differential impact and increasing inequality. So these are the kinds of questions we know a lot about from humanities and social sciences. And it's really important when we look at thinking of ideas to tackle the crises that you also address this kinds of effect on how it will actually impact people.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, actually, because oftentimes I suppose we think, oh, it's a solution to climate change, so it's fine, but really you have to think of the other impacts as well and make sure that it is ethical, that it addresses other problems maybe as well. It fixes things, doesn't cause more issues also.
And it's also not just about making it ethical, but it's also it affects the likelihood that it will succeed.
Yes,
because if somebody doesn't feel personally invested in a project, then they will maybe not adopt it, even if it will actually solve the problem that they are facing. So it's all about that connection with humans and kind of taking that into account when you're making these plans.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. It was really, really interesting.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, I think that's all the questions I have for you, but thank you. And best of luck with the rest of your time here.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. And next I have Tian.
Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, I'm good. And you are working on the climate neutral and smart cities.
Yes.
Great. Before we go into that, can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I am from Boston in the US. I went to Sweden, Stockholm, last year for my master's degree at KTH in sustainable urban planning. Before that, I was at Boston University studying graphic design. And that was influenced by me going to Venice and realizing that there's a city that exists in the world without cars. And it's actually really interesting. They have trash collectors or garbage collectors who actually like roll up carts up the stairs and then down the stairs and into boats. And I thought like kind of it translated from this graphical uniqueness into an interest in urban design and urban planning.
Brilliant.
So that's where I am now.
And how are you finding, first of all, how did you find that transition? And how are you using your graphic design now into the transition into your urban planning?
Well, I guess there are two ways that graphic design translates into any profession, really. For graphic design, when you study it, it's really about how you communicate information, how you communicate thoughts or emotions or any kind of thing into a visual or into another form. And so when you can learn how to make information accessible, make it compartmentalized and understandable, digestible, then it's much easier for anyone to communicate with other people in various forms, in various ways. So, I mean, doing that makes it easy to translate complex problems into simpler compartments so that academics can translate information for the general public, but also it's really useful, especially in urban planning and urban design, to have graphic design skills when you're pitching projects, when you're introducing specific design concepts, and generally having kind of a professional look to your work, and that applies to any profession that you
of course. I know myself that I've tried to make presentations and I have a graphic designer, so I make a presentation, I send it, and
it looks great.
It beautiful, and I'm like, how did you do this? It's gorgeous. Okay, brilliant. And then just my final question for you, how are you enjoying your time here? How was the first day and a half?
Well, I mean, my first experience, this is my first time in the Netherlands.
Okay.
So outside of the TalentOn, I've seen pictures of the cities in the Netherlands, and I've seen, I've read about the bike culture and the bike infrastructure, but I was actually just blown away by the fact that it actually exists. As someone who's always wanted bike infrastructure and proper advocates for non-car types of transportation, this was like a dream come true to actually be here. The TalentOn is really interesting because it's such a different mix of people, or a diverse mix of people. People who are in this kind of startup world, people who are not in the startup world, people who study linguistics, people who are lawyers, people who have a chemistry background, bioscience background. And it's just really interesting hearing all of the projects and the perspectives. And for example, my group is currently working on a solution that is not at all in my field of expertise, but it's so interesting learning about the things that we can do to make the solution happen.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. Thank you for sharing your background and your thoughts on urban planning, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll invite my last guest, Elisa.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for joining and also for waiting for a little while. Appreciate it. So, you're working in the Restore Our Oceans and Waters, and is this something that is connected to your background, to your work?
Yes,
a little bit.
Not at all, but I'm an ecobiology.
Okay.
So I study conservation biology also.
Okay.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
Now for my PhD, I'm studying the relationship between some invertebrates in the ocean all over the world.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very important to restore our ocean to preserve the species from a biodiversity point of view.
Of course, yeah. And do you also then look at, so you said evolution?
Yeah.
In biology. So do you look then at things from the past as well, invertebrates from the past? So then I understand how we need to also preserve ours now, so that in the future, think. Okay, so I can see why it's important to you, of course. And what do you think then is the biggest challenge that is facing the oceans at the moment? Is that a bit of a big question? But or one of which that you think is really we need to work towards to solve?
So we need to, before we need to identify the real problem. Of course, the microplastics, of course, but also the acidification of ocean.
Yeah.
For me, for example, that I study corals, acidification is a very big problem, but no one cares about it because microplastic in this moment are on the top of the ocean problem.
Yeah.
So I think we need to better understand what are the problems in the ocean and also in the fresh water, of course.
Yes, yeah.
And then we can find a solution. We are young researcher with a lot of ideas.
Exactly.
We can find the solution.
Yeah. I think we can. I think this is if it's gonna be found somewhere, here is a good point. And finally, I'd like to see just what are you hoping to gain from your experience here at EU TalentOn?
I started my PhD during COVID situation 2 years ago.
Okay.
So for me to be here to share my ideas with other researchers from all over the Europe is fantastic.
Yes.
Also because I'm the only one biology researcher in my team. I think also all my arena. So it's wonderful to listen people from that talk about the same problems from another point of view, like engineer or chemistry. So I'm very happy to stay here.
Great. Well, we're very happy to have you, and thank you for talking to me.
Thank you
That's
too.
all the questions I have, and we'll be back soon with a few more interviews. But until then, thank you very much to my 4 lovely interviewees.
I have a little bit of a stupid, non-scientific question that aroused my interest while you were speaking. But from what I could hear, if kind of cooperation and contact between and collaboration between not just different fields but different countries is quite important in this kind of research. Where do you think we are currently? How do you think that can be improved?
Yeah, no, so in a sort of ideal world, given also the importance of patients, so let's put it first, not the importance of companies or governments or so. Of course, there should be collaboration without any front. Absolutely. If you go to China, then Chinese want to help, but the government now also started making right to contact the data system. That also falls, by the way, US for the first time. But I think that most scientists don't care. But the laws may make it complicated. But if you ask me, I think that if you have said that dimethyl we have made a kilogram, then you can treat 10,000 patients. Just start collaborating with anyone. Some as long as good collaboration, basically the clinical trials should be properly done. Now, what the China has, for example, India has a similar case, and many other countries, are patient numbers. Now, the Netherlands is smaller than half of the big cities in China in terms of people. And we have 8 academic centers. Even they don't collaborate very well. And let alone the local hospitals. They have 1 center with more patients. So a clinical trial can be done like that. And then you can of course argue that drugs behave differently in say Chinese example versus Western patients. Well, if it works well in China, then it's already one thing, but I think generally speaking it's not a big issue. What it basically means is first of all technology. The second of all, you just have to and I can tell you fully even find stories also with people in Varenhuizen, they give basic knowledge. I think it's cool. We can learn a lot by just simply talking to people across frontiers. And it's fun.
And I am back again with some more interviewees. This time I'm first with Sarah. Sarah, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me here today. So your mission is the adaptation to climate change, that's correct?
Yes.
Great. So before we talk a little bit about yourself and also the TalentOn, could you tell me a bit about your background?
Well, I mean, I think I bring somewhat of a different background of what we expect here at the TalentOn. Definitely a lot of people with a more background in science and numbers. I am more in the policy side of things, governance, human rights, and more in the political science field. So yeah, it's definitely looking at adaptation and climate from more of a social perspective, behavioral perhaps. So yeah, there's also that angle that it's pretty interesting and we're developing in our project.
Oh, great. So it's really nice then that because obviously your team then are using your skills as well in that area, and you know that could bring an edge to your team.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. And focusing then, as you said, on your more political side, I know that activism is very important to you. So could you tell me a little bit more about the work that you do or what you're interested in and why it's important to you?
Yes. My professional background has been in NGOs. Most of since I started working, mostly related to human rights and rule of law, which is something I'm very passionate about, and promoting that not only here in Europe but also abroad in other contexts. And also trying to include that in the project and how can we empower local communities and involve them. So yeah, that's also kind of like, I guess, what I have to bring to the table.
Yeah, definitely. But this, as you said, empowering local communities, it is so important, especially for anything to do really with climate change, because it affects us all and we need to talk to each other and figure out how we can make adaptations based on areas, I suppose. Yeah. And great. And then finally, just how are you finding taking part? Are you enjoying it?
Yes, very much. And getting to meet people from different places, different backgrounds, different disciplines has been a great experience. A bit stressful,
yeah.
I might say. Definitely how they portray it, a pressure cooker. Yeah, we were definitely yesterday in very much the deep part of the of the project, but now slowly getting back up.
Oh,
so
I'm glad to hear. Yeah,
yes.
you're back on up.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant.
But overall, a great experience and just very lucky and fortunate to be here.
Well, we're really happy to have you here. Yes. And thank you so much. That's all the questions I have for you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And good luck with the rest of it as well.
Yes.
And next I have Maria. Right. Hi, Maria.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. And you're working on the mission of climate neutral and smart cities.
Yes.
Great. So could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I come from Bulgaria and I currently work at an institute for big data called Big Data for Smart Society. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the Department of Future Cities, which is really closely related to my mission.
Right.
And there I mainly focus on simulations of the physical environment like wind flow, air pollution, dispersion. And the whole idea is to help authorities make informed decisions because it is very important and all the decisions should be based on data and on science.
Wow, great. So you're really working with other stakeholders
yes.
to kind of improve, I suppose, how things are done within the city. And brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, and also with citizens, because citizens' awareness is also very important.
Yes, yeah. And how do you, what kind of projects do you do to make citizen awareness, or how do you do it? How do you tell the citizens what you're doing?
We are creating a city digital twin. It's like a digital copy of the whole city with all the semantics inside, with you can make simulations there of the wind flow, but you also have data about like a 3D models of the buildings. You have demographic data. You can input supply and demand of different services in the city. For example, here you need a kindergarten or you need a school, and you can test whether it is the optimal position for this school.
Oh, great. Wow. That sounds very useful.
Yeah, so you can optimize basically everything.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Sounds like a really cool project.
Yeah, and people can just log in this platform and visualize it.
Ah, so it's quite accessible as well then.
Yeah.
Great. And then focusing more on just the TalentOn side, why did you decide to apply and take part?
Well, somehow all of the experiences in my life are connected to cities. And my educational background is in structural engineering, so I have knowledge in this side as well, how the city functions, how it can be built, and also my current work. And finally, I want to make something to improve the situation we live in, the environment.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for talking
to
me, and it's been lovely to hear about what you do, and I think that the twin map that you talked about, very cool, really, really interesting idea. I'd love to see it myself.
Yeah.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's all from me for now. We'll be back soon with some more interviews.
Ping me one more time and we'll eventually find time to chat. So, now we're going to go into the art of pitching. A very important skill for all innovators and entrepreneurs and really all human beings, because we communicate a lot in our lives. No matter what career path you choose, you will need to be able to communicate what you're doing and who you are in order to get people to want to help you, to invest in you, to give you a job, to promote you, to want to date you. So we use pitching skills in all areas of our lives. And certainly if you decide to become an innovator or an entrepreneur, you will find yourself pitching all the time. Who are we pitching to? Who are we pitching to in general? Customers, so they will buy our products or start using our services. Investors, so they might invest money in our business. Yes? Who else? Anyone who might listen, in order to get what? In order
To share the information.
right? Feedback on the idea, new input, maybe new doors will open, right? This journey is very unpredictable. And you will find yourself talking about your new venture all the time, right? You're at a coffee shop with a friend, and next to you is somebody who might overhear your conversation and could help change your life by investing in your business or sending you an introduction to somebody who can fundamentally change the trajectory of your business. So it's very unpredictable what can happen, but one thing is for sure, the more people you talk to, the more evangelizers you're going to have out there, opening up doors, talking about your business. And that's why it's so important that you can tell the story that other people can repeat. Right? We want to present our business in a way that's memorable, so other people remember what you're working on, so they might someday want to buy your product or sign up for your service, or when they're in a conversation with a friend 2 years from now, they'll remember, oh, you should talk to this startup. Right? You hear me all the time, we're talking about your projects, and like, oh, I have a friend who's working on something relevant, you should check this out, or I was just working with a team, and it's like, oh, a friend of mine built an app that was somewhat similar, or I've heard of this, but I would only be able to reference that if it was memorable what they were doing, right? So you're trying to achieve that. So entrepreneurs are always pitching to investors, to customers, to potential partners for your business. The first time you call up like a Walmart, or what is the equivalent, some like large potential partner, are they going to answer the phone? Are they going to want to work with you? Like, no, you're some scrappy little startup. Like, what can you do? They're going to hang up on you and tell you to go away 1,000,000 times. Are you going to give up? No, but you're going to reframe the pitch somehow, right? You're going to test out a new value proposition. Maybe I have this other angle that's going to make it more valuable to them, right? So we change the pitch depending on our audience. Some investors are going to be more impact-focused investors, and they're going to focus on how are you making the world a better place, whereas other investors might be more, return on investment type focused, and you want to focus more on the financials and how you're doing good, but you're also making money and you're going to get your money back and all that stuff. So the pitch changes depending on your audience, but we'll go through some of the general elements of your pitch, and of course specifically relevant to TalentOn.
Hi and welcome back everyone. We have Ines here with me for another interview. So hello Ines, welcome. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Ines Silva Santos, I'm Portuguese and I'm currently finishing my master's in electrical and computer engineering.
That sounds very interesting. And how did you find out about this TalentOn?
Well, luckily my girlfriend found about it something on Instagram, and she showed it to me. It looked super interesting, and I fell in love with the mission arena that is related to the seas and the oceans, because from where I come from, the sea is probably the most important thing. If you go to Portugal, everything is about the ocean. We had an Expreneur in 2000. The theme was the ocean, so it was a no-brainer for me.
So do you think with your team in the mission arena you can come up with a good solution for the mission?
Yeah, well, it's a really broad topic. Hopefully we'll do something really interesting. I don't want to give too much away, but it has to do with microplastics and real-life, real-time tracking of these extremely harmful particles.
Interesting. And so what type of expertises are in your team?
So we have a data scientist. We also have people who are used to satellite imagery. We have people who work a lot with contamination, with small particles. So it's a really broad range, and all the people add something to the table. So that's really fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So you're still in your master's?
Yeah.
Probably gonna do a PhD if you're...
Yeah. I'm still not sure because, to be honest, I'm an engineer. So in engineering, it's always this, I kind of want to go into action, to spring into action. But I also really love academia and I love helping science move forward. So it's still I still have to think about it, but hopefully I can start working and eventually do a PhD while I'm working on something that really makes me passionate about it.
Well, this is wonderful to hear, and I hope you will stay in touch with the other talents that are in your team.
Yeah, obviously, they're super nice, and I hope we can keep contact and maybe even visit each other in different countries. One of my teammates is from Turkey, which is a lovely place. I really want to get to know Turkey and to visit it, so hopefully I'll like crash in his couch someday.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful plan, Ines. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening, and we hope to see you back soon.
Thank you.
In total, to talk to them about your amazing projects. In the show pitch, you can get into more details, but there's still stuff that you will have to leave out. Tomorrow, because we have the Q&A session, you can have your main pitch deck, but you can also have a couple of backup slides. So we can work on what are probably some of the typical questions you're going to hear, and then you can sort of leave that as a cliffhanger in your pitch, knowing that they're probably going to ask about this, and then boom, here's a backup slide. Oh, funny you should ask. I have a slide about this. Right, so knowing stuff you won't be able to elaborate enough on in your main 5 minutes, you can have backup slides for that later. So in a 15 to 20 minute investor pitch, right? So usually what happens with entrepreneurs who are asking for money, we'll talk about this later in the fundraising for those who are interested in that. But the way it works is that you get an introduction to an investor somewhere, or you meet them at a random cafe and you give your elevator pitch, and they're like, oh, that sounds interesting, we should talk more. And now you set up a meeting and you might have half an hour, or if you're lucky, you get a full hour for that investor pitch call. And on the pitch call, you get to go through your deck for 10 to 15 minutes, and then the investors will grill you, and maybe you only get to talk for 1 minute and then to stop you. It's like, yeah, let's jump to XYZ. So some investors don't let you do the whole pitch, some people do. But in the 15 to 20 minute investor pitch, you have a whole outline with more slides and all that stuff. We'll not talk too much about that, but I'll point you to some resources. Okay, so what are we trying to achieve with our elevator pitch and also in our show pitch? Well, we want the audience to remember us, right? We want to make it memorable. And the best way to do that is to ignite some kind of feeling, but also to make sure that we come across as somebody who's super passionate about the project we're working on. So think about, what are some of the things in your project right now? You're welcome to take a couple of notes and reflect on this along the way. What makes you smile about the project you're working on right now? What are you most proud of? What are the core features that if we could do this for people, it would really change their lives? And one good way to sort of dive into this is using a framework by a gentleman called Simon Sinek. Have you heard of Start With Why? I see a lot of smiling faces that are nodding. So Simon Sinek gave a TED Talk, TED.com. They have a bunch of talks, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept. And his TED Talk is one of the most viewed talks. It has over 45 million views today. And he talks about this communication strategy where he introduces the 3 golden circles. And he says that powerful communicators and good companies, when they communicate about the product, they don't talk about what they do or how they do it. They talk from inside the golden circle about why they do what they do. Because at the end of the day, people will be much more interested in hearing what they do and how they do it if they understand why you do what you do. And again, it goes back to the first point, start with a problem. Right? We only want to care about your features of your product if we know why you're even in this business. Why do you care about it? Why should I care about what you're doing? Well, because it changes the world and helps all these people in this and this way. So, what is your why? For your project right now, what is your why? And why would it get you to be motivated first thing in the morning to go up and work 100 hours a week for the next 10 years on making this vision come to reality? Right? It has to be very clear to you why this project has to win TalentOn 2022. Right? Why the investors should bet on you and invest in you and award you the first place. So that's a pretty key point, and for me, I feel like the easiest way to define this why, it's ultimately about the impact we can create, right? It's about this grand vision of helping people's lives and helping planet Earth and make sure all these bad things don't happen. And so it's probably somewhere along those lines where you can find that why. But make sure to distill it into something very concrete, easy to understand. So one thing that a lot of people struggle with when they're pitching is to make sure to communicate what you're doing and how you're doing it and how it's different in the very first minute of the pitch. The worst thing you can do is people sitting back in their seats after 3-4 minutes and they're still like, so what are you doing? Right, it happens a lot. Even people have tried to practice their pitch, but they still suck at communicating the core aspects of their idea because you're so immersed into your project that it's so obvious to you what it is you're doing, but it's not obvious to the audience. So one technique that I've come across is a tool called Mad Libs for pitching. So I want you all to grab pen and paper right now. And a guy named Adeo Ressi, who started an institution called Founders Institute, will introduce this little tool for us. So I'm going to play a short video where he gives a couple of examples of how to use this model. And then I challenge you to come up with the opening sentence for your project. And not to say that you have to use the opening sentence when you're pitching tonight or when you're pitching tomorrow, but maybe you want to use some version of this because it's very powerful. It's also surprisingly difficult to distill the entire vision of your project. What are you building? Who are you helping? How are you solving that problem? And what is the secret sauce? It's like the unique value proposition. How is this 10 times better and different from all the other solutions out there? If you can distill that into a single sentence, you're well on your way. Because then immediately people understand, okay, I'm now tuned into what you're doing, the problem you're solving, the customer segment, and sort of understand elements of the solution and how it's different. Now we can spend the rest of that time really understanding all the details of your project. So the way I use this for entrepreneurs is like, you come to Silicon Valley and you're pitching to investors. It should be that no matter what kind of conference you go to and who you're speaking to, and even no matter how nervous you get, like I wake you up at 2 o'clock at night and it's like, what is your project all about? And this is like the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Is like, oh, my organization is developing XYZ to help this audience solve this problem with this thing, right? You just, it's on the back of your mind. It's the first thing that comes out, and then you're well on your way. Okay, so check this out. He's a little annoying to listen to, but there's some good insights here. So.
Hi there. I'm pitch your business in a way that's memorable. Hi there. I'm here to talk to you today about how to pitch your business in a way that's memorable. And I'm going to give you a technique that I call Mad Libs for pitching. So every good pitch, whether it's an elevator pitch, a 3-minute pitch at an angel forum, or even a 20-minute pitch at an investor, starts with a strong opening sentence. And I can't stress to you how important getting this opening sentence right is. So let's take a look at a model, essentially a Mad Libs model. My company, insert your company name, is developing a defined offering to help a target audience solve a problem with secret sauce. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, it's not. Most entrepreneurs mess this simple exercise up. So let's take a look at an example. My company, Socialista, is developing a social utility to help female consumers find deals online faster. Not so bad, not great. Let's look at ways to improve it. So we're going to start with the offering. Now, the first thing you need to do with an offering is be incredibly specific about what you're building. So it's not a social utility, because that could be a power company for all I know. It's an e-commerce site, right? That's a much clearer way of saying what you're making. You want to avoid buzzwords. I've actually heard someone say mobile social CRM. It's an iPhone application, right? You don't need to litter your pitch with buzzwords. And you want to avoid adjectives. Don't say something like revolutionary service. Say what it is, back-end software. You don't need to embellish what you make, just say what it is. So next, let's take a look at the audience. Rather than saying female consumers, which is a type of demographic, try to be more specific, such as new parents who are female, or even 18 to 25-year-old female parents. But the more specific you are, the better it is, the more it makes you look like you understand your business. You want to specify your market, so rather than saying something really broad and undefined, like artists and musicians, which could include jugglers for all I know, you want to say unsigned alternative and electronic bands, for example. And last but not least, you want to clarify the buyer, the individual, especially if you're working in B2B markets. So don't say large businesses, because first of all, I don't even know what that is. Is it a Walmart store, Walmart the company, IBM? I just don't know. Say something like purchasing managers at multinational companies. So this actually specifies who in the business will be buying your product or service. So now my company, Socialista, is developing an e-commerce site to help new parents who are female.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. Right now I have an expert with me who was aiding people in the mission of cancer. So with me is Professor Sjaak Neefjes. Sjaak, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm Professor Sjaak Neefjes.
And a professor in?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So I'm a professor at the LUMC in Leiden. And the official chair is chemical immunology. That is basically combining chemistry and immunology. And the aim, of course, is to bring chemistry in the field of immunology, but also immunology in the field of chemistry. And, well, they can learn a lot from each other, but it's also great to bring new opportunities in different fields.
And how did you get involved in the TalentOn as an expert?
Yeah, no, first of all, I was asked, and I didn't really think too much about it, but when I learned the people that are active here, the bright young minds, I'm really impressed. And so it's really fun to talk to them, to discuss it. And what I found exciting for me is that while I gave the talk and also following the questions that were there, that I realized that they are really thinking very deep and very smart about these issues. So I'm really excited, it's really cool.
So you have an idea that there might be some really cool ideas coming out of these teams.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, what's very important in general in science is that young people think about interesting problems. Because one important reason for that is that young people don't have built up dogma. Whereas, you know, old people like me, we have a lot of dogma. We think that we understand how it works, but we can be pretty wrong.
Yeah.
And people that think without dogma come to very interesting solutions. And then, of course, you have to test whether or not it's correct. But if that turns out to be correct, they have done really very important step in science, namely breaking dogma.
Yeah.
And that's how it basically moves from one step to the next step. That's progression.
Well, that sounds... do you have any tips for these, for all of the missionaries, for the teams who have to give pitches tonight?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, what's always cool is when people are enthusiastic. And I think, you know, what I noted here is they are. So that's a very important point. You have to, you know, science, of course, is work. It's hard work, it's frustrating, but it's also fun.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that young people and also older people are allowed from society to think about problems that are basically very complicated puzzles, to basically come up with solutions, to test them, to basically are allowed to work in a sort of playground, if you like. Yeah, that's great. And I think that young people should not be worried about the complexity of science. They should basically think, well, this is cool, let's go for it.
Well, yeah. I think that's a good message to keep in mind. So
yeah,
thank you very much for taking the time to be an expert and to give this interview. And we will see you back soon with some new interviews.
We could hunt and how and all that stuff. So we learn through stories, and stories are stored in the long-term memory. We sort of, in our brains, we have short-term memory and long-term memory. Probably some neuroscientists here will know a lot more about this, but the long-term memory, very simplistic way, it's like the big hard drive where we can store things forever. And then we have short-term memory is like cache on a computer. When new stuff comes in, we need to get rid of some of the old stuff. If you want to store your pitch on the big hard drive in your audience minds, you need to use storytelling, where they can emotionally connect with it and they start seeing images of how it would be for them if they were impacted by that problem. And so they truly get to empathize with your user, and they agree with you that the problem you're solving is incredibly important. Then they will care enough to remember your pitch, and they will care enough to come up and want to invest in you and help be part of this mission. And it's not just when you're investing, like pitching to investors, but also to future employees and co-founders and everyone else, right? You want to create a movement around what you're doing so that other people want to contribute and want to refer people to support you and all that stuff. So generally, eventually, people hate pitches and product ideas, but they love stories. So if you can start your pitch by exemplifying, with just one example, with one use case, not everything you're doing and every way your product can be used, but one use case on how people are suffering from this problem today, and how if your solution existed, it would dramatically impact their quality of life. Or it would dramatically impact the speed in which we can remove microplastics from the oceans, or whatever it is you're working on. So try to come up with a story. It doesn't have to be super complex. It can be made up, even more powerful if it's something that relates to you. It's part of your story and your DNA, because people will then really be able to connect with that. But try to come up with a story. Okay. When describing your problem, use a story. When describing your solution, Steve Jobs was famous as a storyteller. Do any of you remember how he described, how he pitched the iPod for the first time? He took it out of his jeans, and what did he say?
1,000 songs there, right?
1,000 songs in your pocket. Exactly. Well done. Right? Instead of saying, oh, here is 5.12 gigabytes of music, ladies and gentlemen. 5.12 gigabytes. Right? For you, scientists, that probably can translate into something useful, but for most people, it makes no sense. Right? That's a feature. Okay? So the golden rule in communication and in marketing is that features tell, benefits sell. So when we're thinking through our products and we're inside our little cocoon of working on our stuff, we're very excited about the features that we can offer. No one else gives a shit about the features. Customers don't care about the features of the product. They only care about themselves and their problems and the benefits potentially that you can provide them with if you help solve their problem for them. But they don't care about your features. So we need to translate the features into benefits. That is what will resonate, and that is how people can see why this is making things better. So features tell, benefits sell. Okay, what are these funders, what will they care about? Funders, investors, impact investors, the jury members. They care about two things.
Return on investment?
Yeah. Low risk, high return. Low risk, high return. So your job is to de-risk the opportunity by showcasing that it can be done and that you can do it. So there are different ways of de-risking the opportunity. What are some of the ways we can do to make people believe that you can actually build this and it will actually work? Show some validation of the idea. That you've done your homework, you understand the market, you understand the customer segment, and that the product idea you have seems to resonate with your audience, right? So that's why I'm pushing you constantly. Go out, pick up the phone, try to talk to some of these stakeholders and key influencers and potential customers, because that is really, really powerful proof that you've done your homework and that people are interested. What else can we do to de-risk the opportunity? Have you done this before? Yes? Right. Right, so who are you? Right? We want to see that this team is credible. Right? We want to see hear some of your credentials. And if you're first-time founders or inventors or innovators, there are other things you can do to boost your credibility. You can get very credible advisors to join your advisory board. You can have mentors who are using some of their credibility and it will rub off on you. Right? So if you're a first-time founder, really valuable to have highly credible advisors, because if they trust you, maybe this other investor will also trust you. Right? So anything you can do to build social proof and get some of that credibility is really useful. So you want to do everything you can to de-risk the opportunity by showcasing you understand the market, you understand the users, you've done the homework. In terms of risks, there are two types of risks. There's product risk and there's market risk. Which one is riskier? Market risk, right? Market risk is, should we build it? Product risk is, can we build it? And with all the smart people we have in the room here today, and all the amazing technology that is available to us today, we can build pretty much anything. Not everything, but we can build a lot of things. So the riskiest aspect is, should we build it? Is there a need for this? Do people care about it? There's, like most products that are launched, don't fail because they couldn't build the product, they fail.
Dat heb ik ook wetenschap Dus daarom heb ik altijd een beetje pesthekel aan die projectaanvraag waar je al die milestones van begin tot eind hebt.
Francesca, hello.
Right, hello, good morning.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, of course. So if you could tell me a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Francesca Mauro. I'm from Rome, so from Italy, and I'm an environmental engineer. At Sapienza University of Rome, I'm carrying out my PhD project, which is on the safety management for workers involved in illegal landfills. Because, as you know, illegal landfills are a common European problem. So we are carrying out this research project to protect workers which are involved in the operation.
Okay, so it's focused more on the worker side, the human side of these operations.
Yes, because many times we think about contaminated sites only from an environmental point of view, and it is also important to protect human health and to protect workers from risks.
Yeah, of course, of course. It's a really nice thing to be looking into, I think, and working towards. And your area is the soil deal as well. That's your mission area. So I suppose your work kind of helps with that a little bit as well?
Yes, of course, because when you are going to think about safety management, of course, you need to be aware what are the environmental issues of contaminated sites. And as you know, contaminated sites are one of the objectives of the European mission on soil. So, of course, my research is really important for this point of view.
Brilliant. And I'd also like to ask you why you decided to take part in the TalentOn.
Because the TalentOn is the first event for youth, and it is a very pleasure to meet other young people like me from several European countries.
Yeah.
So I think it's a unique opportunity to meet young researchers.
Yeah, and it's great that you see that opportunity here and that you're taking part. And finally, I'd like to ask you about what you like to do outside of your work. So any fun hobbies that you like?
Yes, I have got one hobby, which is modern dance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm a dancer. Since I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I have this hobby.
Great. And do you like to perform, or is it just more for yourself?
No, I was also in competitions, dance competitions.
Great.
But of course, now I'm older,
Yeah.
so I
Still,
prefer to do it on myself.
Yeah, but still, this is now a competition, so maybe the competitive edge can kind of come in a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me and sharing a little bit about your background. It was really lovely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
And next we have Stephen. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, great to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining me. So if you could also tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Steve. I'm originally from the UK. I think my accent gives that away. But I've spent the last 5 years in Belgium working on my research, which is in biomedical science, in cardiovascular disease, in heart failure, which has absolutely nothing to do with the mission area I'm here to do. So part of the reason I'm here is sort of my side hustle from work is I'm really big with science communication. Absolutely love getting out, talking about my research, but also setting up spaces exactly like this. This is brilliant to help other people talk about their research. Because I found early on in my research career, there's really very few opportunities for young researchers to get out and engage with the public and really hammer home the messages of their wonderful and really exciting research. And I feel that there's big opportunities being missed. So yeah, so I've been trying to set these spaces up and...
Brilliant, brilliant. Wow, and what sort of projects have you been working on, or what sort of spaces?
Yeah, so some of the more famous one would be the Pint of Science Festival, which... it was a festival that started a few years ago in the UK, originally from a bunch of neuroscientists who just went to a bar and put on a few talks in a bar about neuroscience, but it's expanded into a worldwide festival across nearly every university town now has a team that developed this festival where we take researchers and we put them in bars and we fill the bar up and they get to listen to a cool night of research, and I really enjoy being part of that. That's really fun to see and to help the researchers get their pitches right and to help the public to like get to the right events and that's really exciting. And at the same time, I do a lot in podcasting. So I've done a couple of podcasts where I talk about my own research, but I also help edit and develop a podcast from the Science Basement. So go and look them up. They're an outreach organisation based at the University of Helsinki. I met a bunch of people from there in Berlin last year. I've never been to Helsinki. I would love to go. But the one bonus about the pandemic is we now do everything remotely.
Of course, yeah.
I'm able to like edit. So it's a platform where young researchers can come on and in an environment very like this, they just have an interview with some really friendly hosts and they talk about how their research is impacting society. And then I get sent this raw file and edit it all together and we send it out, and it's a really good way of disseminating research ideas in a different manner, or at least I think that. So.
Yeah, great. No, I think it's brilliant. And I think podcasts are up and coming. Everybody now listens to podcasts, and I think it's a really great way to meet people. And especially now, perhaps in the TalentOn, you'll have lots of new people to interview. So if you want to be on a podcast, you know who to talk to. But yeah, and so my last question then is more so, you said that your research area doesn't really have a lot to do with the mission that you're working on. But are you then working more from this are you coming in with more of a science communicator perspective, or are you also bringing in some of the knowledge that you have just from being a scientist as well?
So so it's a combination of all those things. I'm very lucky to be in a really great team, and we have a vast variety of expertise. And so I bring some of my classical biochemistry background is applicable to waters and oceans, so that's a really useful start point from a scientific point of view. Yep. And my communication skills and networking is also quite useful. But it's been a really good experience, and I'm very passionate about so it's not my job as a researcher, but I'm often out swimming, doing water sports. I love to run along the river in Leuven. And I really see the degradation of our waterways and coastlines, and so it's something I'm really passionate about, and just trying to bring that energy to our team and use whatever skills I can get from the back of my mind that I've been trained at to solve these problems because they need solving.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really nice. Thank you for sharing your personal experience as well, and the reasons why you're kind of pushed to do this also. And continue up the awesome communication work as well. It sounds really cool.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So that's all from me for now, but stay tuned for some more interviews a little bit later on.
And also for the gentlemen, and I speak from experience, make sure your zippers are up and you don't have like a white shirt sticking out. It sucks to come home from a 2-hour networking event and you realize that, yeah, there was something really bad with your clothing. So check yourself in the mirror so you feel confident about that. No one told, no one told me. Yeah. So the other thing, I think this goes back to a previous point where like this exercise of like pitching the rubber ducky or pitching your grandma, like simplify the message. Don't assume that the audience understands what you're talking about at all. So simple is better. You want the audience to feel good about themselves. So even if you're repeating something they know, we as human beings, when we hear something we already know, we're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good, I'm pretty savvy, I already knew this stuff. Like sort of like kids, they love to hear the same story because they feel good about it, but it works for grown-ups as well. What we don't like is feeling like somebody's talking over our heads. If we feel dumb, we're just going to tune out as a self-protection mechanism. And the same thing for these jury members. Some of them are very savvy, but they might not know everything about your idea. So just make sure, start from the beginning and even mention some of the stuff that are pretty basic. Okay, I'm almost done here. So, what affects the audience the most out of these? Non-verbal, right? Somebody's like, I don't think that's exactly 55%. Yeah, you might be right. These numbers are pretty generic, but non-verbal is probably the most important thing that the audience are going to judge you based on. It's unfair, but it's how it is. And the next thing is like words, voice, intonation, and then we have 7% of the words we use. What does that mean? What do you spend 98.5% of the time on when you're preparing a new speech? You're like working on the script, it's like, no, I shouldn't use that word, I should use it down here, it's like, it's script perfect. And then you read it through, not even out loud, but read it through the script a couple of times, and then you're ready for your speech, right? That's how most of us prepare for a talk. It's not a good idea, because the audience won't remember the words you use, they remember what? How you make them feel, right? The feeling they had during that presentation. In the first few seconds, people are going to create that first-hand impression in their mind, like, is this person competent? Are they fun? Are they likable? Are they interesting? Do I care about this? We make all these judgments like almost instantly. So think about how you enter the stage, how you enter a room, how you pull out your chair at that first date, or whatever it might be. Like all those things are incredibly important. So, the body talks. It's not just what we say, it's how we say it. So how do we handle ourselves up on stage? It'll be a little tricky. So I'm going to try a couple of different exercises with you here. The first thing I want you to try to do is try to stand up with me here for a second. Everybody stand up. So how do you feel about your body posture right now? Awesome. Love the compliment. Some people have their hands behind their backs, like in general, ready to the floor. Right? That could be an approach. Some people have their hands in their pockets. Why is that not a good idea? What's that? You're hiding something, right? You don't come across as trustworthy. People will instantly judge you, and the best way to build trust is to show the palms of your hands. So you're showing you're not hiding a weapon. So this is how you don't do it too much, then you're going to come across as a preacher. But don't put your hands in your pockets. So one aspect, you come across as somebody who's hiding something. What else?
Too casual.
It's too casual. You come across as somebody who's like, yeah, you know, I'm building this $1 billion business, all right. You should probably invest or give me a price or something. No. Or some people might have coins or keys in your pocket and you start playing around with that on stage. Doesn't look so good on stage. No, you don't want to do that. And it also gives you really bad posture. Right? So hands out of your pocket. So what do we do with them, Henrik? Well, You find some place comfortable above your waistline where you can keep your hands under control when you're not using them. Right? Up to you, whatever you feel like is comfortable. Then you can use your hands to point to a slide. You're welcome to talk with your hands. Do we have some Italians in the room? Try not to be too Italian. It can also be pretty distracting. Right? But you're welcome to use your hands in a natural way. And then you can come back to this posture out of their pockets. So you can come back to this comfortable position. So, what do we do with our legs? We stand in one spot. You don't want to be pacing too much. It's like highly distracting. And also, especially some of the women in the crowd. I know some guys do it too. And I do it sometimes too, but I look particularly stupid when I do it. You tend to think that, oh great, I'm on a stage. I should probably showcase how much I can like wrap my legs around. I don't feel like I want to show that. And you're standing like this, like you barely balance, and it doesn't look great. And you're like confusing yourself because 20% of your brain have to focus on just standing up straight. So shoulder wide space between your legs. And then stand up straight, not full Schwarzenegger, but like a string is pulling you up. So you're like proud of what you're presenting. You're proud of who you are and the project you're creating. And you can just stand here in this space and you feel grounded, right? You take a deep breath. It's amazing the power of the breath. It has that ability to just ground you and instantly cool you down, cool the nerves, get things under control. Don't be afraid to pause along the way. Like the audience are just going to reflect on the last point you made and they're going to think it's intentional. And it really grounds you, keep things under control. So take a deep breath and everything's going to be fine. Great. And then you stand in this position, you can just stay in this position, that's great. However, if you have the ability to have eye contact with the audience, and if it's a big room, try to focus on the different corners in the room. Certainly don't talk to your slides with the back to the audience. Right? You want to address the audience, and if you don't like having eye contact, if that makes you nervous, just focus on people's foreheads. They think you're having amazing eye contact, but you're actually just focusing on the forehead. So that can be a little trick. Okay, so those are some of the key things. Don't sit down yet, because there's something called power posing. Have you heard of power posing? Yes? Who can explain power posing? Why do we do it? What is it?
It's to get in a pose like this to stimulate the brain or the body to feel super comfortable and confident.
And confident, right. So it was introduced by a Harvard researcher named Amy Cuddy. And she did some research, and it was later criticized, but then later she did more research and it came up with the same results. That you can be up to 30% more convincing if you've done some kind of power pose prior to getting up on stage, prior to entering the room at a networking event, prior to going to an exam or a date or whatever it is you're trying to do. Right? So you hold this like hyper powerful position for like 30, 40 seconds, and it's up to you whether you want to do Wonder Woman or Superman. You can even do it sitting, actually, prior to a Zoom call, like a hyper, like powerful pose. And by taking this kind of position for a little while, you boost your testosterone level, right? The hormone that makes you more powerful, aggressive, ready to go hunt and conquer the world. And you lower your cortisol level, the hormone in the brain that makes you nervous and anxious and depressed. It's pretty wild. The best type of power pose that I've come across, are you up for trying that? It's very awkward, but also very fun. So the way it goes is that we start by taking our hands above our heads and then we snap our fingers like this. And then on the count of 3, we scream as loud as we can. You don't hear it all over Leiden. Yes, yes, yes. Okay? Come with me, people. 3, 2, 1. Yes, yes, yes! Wow. Look at that. Woo! See the transformation? So, the transformation is really evident. Right? People are smiling, they're also awkward, but you get that boost of energy. And the thing is, the audience can see that. The audience can feel that, wow, this person comes in with all this testosterone, power, and confidence. It's amazing. So think about doing some type of power pose before going on stage. However, if you're doing a positive self-talk, again, I'm speaking from experience. Like behind the curtain, you're about to get up on stage, make sure your microphone is off. And people can't see you, like, it's just like, yes, I'm awesome, I'm so great. Oh, it's amazing, I got this. And they go on stage and be like, so weird. Yeah, so don't do that. Okay, if you're using slides, you're probably going to be using slides. You have 5 minutes, and it's not a good idea to like speed through a million slides. So I would say no more than 10 slides. Okay, 5 minutes, you could probably keep it to 6 to 8 slides. And what we put on those slides, I'll get to in a minute. There's another rule about slides. I want those slides to be as visual as possible. The slides are not for you as speaker notes, they're for the audience. If you need speaker notes, that's fine. Have them printed out in your hand. Have little cue cards, perfectly okay. But don't use your slides and speaker notes and reading from the slides. You'll be back to the audience, and they can read faster than you can talk. So by the time you're done, they're already on their social media. So slides are for the audience, not for you. No more than 20 words per slide. And no more than 1 key point per slide. So if you have multiple graphics, keep them on separate slides. Because otherwise, again, if the audience starts getting confused, you lose them. So remember these points. I tried to summarize it in this order, right? And this is, again, just a recommendation. But you want to first tell a story where you make us understand what is the... Did I make a mistake?
I'm sorry that you're talking about max 20 words per slide, right?
What's that?
That's more than 20 words. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But this is not... I'm not pitching right now. I can break the rules. Yes, I can break the rules. What I'm trying to help you with here is, this is for you to remember. Not just to me. Customers, who's the user? Who's the customer? What are the key players? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Ideally, use an element of storytelling here to make it memorable, to get people to care about it. Right? And it could be an image that essentially ignites an emotional response. Don't be afraid to use powerful images. You want people to have an emotional connection to what you're solving. Product, then you describe the service, your solution, what technology you're using, some of the features, but remember to translate the features into benefits, ideally. So how is that product solving? What are the benefits for the user? How big is the market? And how are you 10 times better than the competitors? What is the impact you're creating, and how is it aligned to the EU missions? So now, you see what I'm doing now? I'm also, with my back to the audience, reading the slide. I'm doing everything wrong. So you can read all this, and I'll send this out to you guys as well, so you took pictures. Implementation model is going to be a key one. So you want to be able to outline how are you going to bring this idea to life, what is it going to take to build it, what is it going to take to create the first version, the minimum viable version of this, to test it out, to run the pilots, and then full on scale. And then who's on your team? Who's making this vision come to life? And it's totally fine if you, under the team slide, also mention, we actually currently don't have this person and that person, but they are going to be our first hires. That's totally honest, totally fine as well. Practice makes perfect. So whoever is going to deliver that 1-minute pitch tonight, make sure to not just write the script and read it in your head, but actually deliver it to your team. And ideally try to deliver it to one of the other teams, right? You're all buddies, and if you're afraid of giving anyone an idea in your own mission arena, go to one of the other mission arena rooms and say, hey, could I just borrow one of you for like 5 minutes to give feedback on my pitch? Please do that, right? Be proactive, use each other, and run through it multiple times. Both the 1-minute pitch tonight and the 5-minute pitch tomorrow. If you really want to get serious,